Hi, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, good night, wherever you are in the world. As you can see, it's nice and warm where I am here in California, getting to be 70 degrees or so. So it's quite nice actually here. The sky is blue, all is good. Anisa is here. And so here we are again together. I played a couple of relas up ahead when we started. As a kind of a beginning tribute to the man, my father, because today is what, the 24th, and in 5 days on April 29th is his 101st birthday. And so I just thought that it's not going to be Friday on that day, so we will just start it off here, and during the week let's all of us like share photos and anecdotes or whatever about him that you might have as in your possession. So looking forward to a little contact there from you all. So yeah, happy birthday Abaji. So there's that, and so I played two relas up front, and one of them was his, which was with the middle finger being a prominent element in that rela, and the Dina of course. So I believe that there were many raws that he created which dealt with Dina, and probably a very detailed visit of that particular phrase, not Dine Gene, but Dine. And he was a master at that, and the kind of balance he had between this open sound and everything else that's closed, but evenly balanced and coming out like this one complete row was just fantastic to hear and marvel at. So that's what I did. I offered a tribute, and so we'll move on forward from there. And I wonder if there's a question or two that we might want to begin with. And so yeah, so do we have a question?
We do.
Madam
Laya Kari.
Laya Kari.
Laya Kari.
Okay, it's definitely not like Meena Kari or Ada Kari. And it's something that we all want to have adhikari on, but it's a little difficult. Laya Kari is obviously we are talking about having a good sense of time, knowing exactly where the sum is. This is one thing that my father always used to say, "Beta, sum ko dekho." And so what did that mean? I mean, I'm still trying to decipher many hidden interpretations and meanings in that one line, "Sum ko dekho." It's not yet revealed totally, but I imagine in a basic sense that he meant that if you know where the sum is, working backwards, then you already know how much distance you have to cover, and keeping that in mind, you can also then make out what the terrain is, whether it's an uphill road or whether it's a curvy road, whether it's a downhill road, or all combinations, and how you will traverse through it. So that is something that maybe he was referring to, one. And secondly, when you know the sum, you also in reference know where you are, and so when you know where you are obviously aware of which beat of the rhythm cycle that is. So if an automatic, a built-in recognition of that develops inside of you, that is in a way a beginning of trying to become a layakar. So it's important to have good timing. It's important to be aware of your position in the development of or the traveling of the rhythm cycle as it's laid out. and also knowing your destination and seeing on the map what that kind of road that is and how you will get there. I mean, sometimes you say, okay, I'm going to go from point A to point B and I'm going to take highway number so and so, and I'll get off on this road and go to this little town and have some, you know, you go from Bombay to Pune in the old days, stop at Khopoli, have biryani, or get into the train and go to Pune and stop at Karchat and have barata vadas, whatever. I mean, so those are things that you've already got in your head, you've planned it, and you know your destination is Pune. So yes, all this is easier said than done, but this is exactly where you need to be. So having said that, how do you, take off, and how do you start off moving towards being a layakar? It's a question that has haunted a zillion rhythmists and instrumentalists. Some of it is natural born. You're able to, find your way from one point of a city to another without having a map. It's a built-in something, or some places where you've been before, you go once and you already know the way again, how to get there, even in a strange city. So these are things that sometimes you have inside of you, certain DNA that makes it possible. But the other way, of course, is to be able to know your language. As they say in the world of acting, know your lines. You must know your lines. If you don't know your lines, you will be faltering along and trying to figure out what to say, or stammering through, when your turn comes to speak on the camera. So know your lines, and that in this sense means, know your vocabulary, know the language totally, understand the combinations and permutations that you can come up with in this language. And so that helps in the sense that if you're going 13, 14, 15, 16, so that's a kaida. But if you know this and you know it inside and out, you also know that what do I have left to get to the downbeat, to the sum. You are already aware of that. So if this kind of development happens, you develop your laikari. Laikari is not necessarily put on the metronome and go take and play to that, or have the lera box turned on and play to that, because that will get you into a robotic system of playing. The human system is something else. When you get on the stage to play with, say, a lera player, if you're a tabla player playing a solo, the lera player will start his lera and will be very good in timing. Even then, the fact is that his tempo will waver. There's a human thing about tempo. You, as a tabla player, might be driving the tempo, going a little faster and faster. The harmony player, on the other hand, might be somebody who plays the lera more laid back and relaxed and drops the tempo slower. And then at times ebb and flow is different. Sometimes certain passage on the lera will speed up, at some point slow down, and so therefore the cycle would stretch like that. You as a tabla player have to be aware of that human component in the timekeeping. Similarly, when you are a tabla player and you're accompanying a sitar player or something, vocalist or whatever, your timing is also in question with that vocalist or sitar player or a dancer. How you're driving the tempo, or are you slowing it down, or you're keeping it straight, boom. And when it's your turn to play the utan, do you naturally speed up? All those things happen. So those are things to be considered. So there's many layers involved in being able to develop your understanding of laya. And then comes, understanding of what you've got in a matra. I think one of the things that I have learned is that I've tried to understand, and this comes not just from Indian drumming, but from Latin percussion drumming as well, or jazz drumming, is how to understand the elasticity between beat 1 and beat 2 and so on and so forth with other beats, you know. So if you're going 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and da da din na da da, quarter notes, da 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 din na, 8 notes, da da din na, da da, triplet, da da din na, da da, 16s, and da da din na, 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 da din na, da din na, da din na, So developing the lay should not be a focus of yours to be visualized in a whole rhythm cycle. It should be visualized from 1 to 2 or 2 to 3 at the most. So what you can accomplish in those 2 beats would establish your ability to be able to compress or expand the matra. And when you have developed that ability, you have started on your way to having some understanding of Layakari. And this is a subject that can go on and on forever, but your sense of timing being solid is the most important thing. What I did when I used to practice in my younger days, that I used to turn on the radio, what do you call it, Radio Ceylon in Mumbai in the late 50s, 60s, so on. And then songs would come on of great music composers, and Lata ji singing, or Rafi Saab singing, Kishore Da, Mukesh ji, everybody. They were all singing the songs. I would play a qaida, for instance, or a rela, or a chalan, or a on a song. And then the next song would come, and I would play the same on the next song. The tempo may be different. And the way the song either slowed down or speeded up kind of gave me an idea of how the same pattern would emerge in different tempos, and then also how to treat it. So that was my basic understanding of playing compositions, and that's how I developed my portfolio of compositions like uthans and qaidas and tihais and relas and so on in different tempos. So then when I would get on and play on the stage with a sitar player or a sarod player, I would then know that at this tempo I'll play that, at that tempo I'll play that, and so on and so forth. So that was the beginning of how I developed my understanding of lay and my control over how I saw my travel through the beat zone to arrive at a concert, knowing what a sitar player does, they play in, and so on, and so and how to be ready to be able to play my compositions in those. So Layakari, again, a very detailed subject. It's hard to just speak about it in this manner, but just a short take on it from me. And if there are other maestros watching or something, please chime in. And speaking of other maestros, I have to mention my dear Guru Bhai Pandit Yogesh Sansi on Wednesday, which I think is April 29th, my father's birthday. He's gonna do something on Instagram, and I think we'll all kind of call in and put in our 2 bits on that day. So I don't know what his Instagram address is, but check it out. I'm sure you guys are good at finding out. So any other question?
How do you improve the tonal quality of the bayan?
How do I control the?
Improve your tonal quality on the bayan.
Improve the. Well, first of all, get a nice bayan. That's important.
That was another question. Where do you get your best tabla?
Actually, there are many. First of all, where do you get your good tablas? People say, okay, that tabla maker is a very good tabla maker, or that tabla maker is a great tabla maker. As far as I'm concerned, I swear by this guy, or I swear by that guy, and so on. I think tabla making ability is a two-way street. It's not only the tabla maker, but also the tabla player. And the reason why I say that is because my father used to have his tablas made by a tabla maker known as Sadanand Appa Kashikar. He used to be in Mumbai, and there was a tabla shop on Leamington Road in Mumbai, just like a hole in the wall. And we would go there, and they put out a stool for my father to sit on the street while Sadanand would work on his tablas. But the need or the reason for going there was that when it came the time to put the siyahi on, which is the very important element that makes the tone and the tuning of the instrument appear, it was important for my father to be there. And then as the layers of the siyahi were put on, Sadanand ji would give my father the tabla. He would test it and say ek aur goli, or test it and say, okay, take a little bit of this end, or take a little bit of that end, or rub it in a little bit harder, and or it's not even, or that kind of a thing. And he would keep talking to Sadanand, and they would keep collaborating and interacting that way for hours on end on that street, with the noise of the cars and all going by, until they arrived at a point where it was just the tone that my father needed. So what was it? It's a two-way street. It was an injection of my father's thought and Sadanand ji's ability to be able to put that thought or that tone or sound vision onto the instrument. And so that has to be put together. So most tabla makers have that ability to do that, provided a tabla player himself sits with them and guides them through his needs or her needs as a tabla player. So that's an important part of having a good tabla made. So yes, I've seen Anindo Bhai, Swapanda, Shubhankar Bhai, Yogesh Bhai, all these guys, they actually sit with the tabla maker and they walk through the tuning process with the tabla wala. So that happens. I, on the other hand, I would have a different issue. I travel so much and I'm here while the tabla maker is in India, and so I rely on someone like, say, I used to rely on Sadanand ji, and now recently on someone like Haridas Vatkar, to have a certain idea of what my tabla should be like. And then they would make it, at least Sadanand ji used to make it and then let me know that the tabla was ready. Then I would go, or he would come to the house, and then we would sit through the final touches of the tuning. Haridas ji just does the same thing. He comes to the house and we sit and we work on it. Now this is something that they did for me. It was a blessing. They didn't need to do that. They are masters of their art form, and for me to expect that they would come to my home and work with me is far beyond my ability to understand why they would actually do that. I should be the one going to them and sitting with them like my father did with Sadanand ji. But these days it's a little difficult with people swarming over and wanting photos and autographs and so on. So there are distractions. So they come over and they understand that, and I thank them for being so so accommodating to me. So that's what I would say. To a key for a good tabla is to be personally involved in the process of its creation, and so then it's made as you would like it to be. So that's one thing. Now, the tone of the baya, again, that is the chain reaction to the first question. Is if I have the baya that I like to play on, then to start with, I have the open tone that I like, and hopefully the resonance that I need to have. Then the thickness of the skin is an important thing. Of course, the CID is an important thing. So all that comes together, and then my ability to be able to extract the kind of sound that I visualize coming out of that instrument, combining all that together is the process that starts how my baya should sound. So if I have that much resonance, and when I have that much resonance, I can play with it, you know. So I have that much give on the skin, so I'm able to get tones out of it. So that's my sa, and then I have the scale available to me. But to be able to get to the point of where do I want to go? So to be able to find the notes, I need to know how much pressure I am applying to get to that note. And that is something that comes from practice, from knowing. So that is one of the things that has to happen. Secondly, they say something about the strength in the wrist. That determines your ability to be able to extract from the baya emotional element, right? So I mean, half the time I've noticed tabla students playing from the small end of the gab and the kinar over here, and there are a couple of reasons for it. One is that you're able to get an attack sound better. It's easier to get the baya to respond from there, as opposed to the maidan being bigger, which is how the old maestros used to play. That all changed, I think, around the time of Gudai Maharaj Ji, Pandit Shanta Prasad Ji, that is, who played from this shorter end, but he manipulated that in a way where the slide became an important part of the baya. So slide. If I'm playing from the big maidan, that is a much more distance to travel for the slide than it is from the shorter end. So for me, the slide is the second option. The first option is pressure. So if I'm playing, I'll be going. Short hand, more prominent. When you turn it to the maidan here, the attack is more rounder, and therefore you have to work harder to get the punch. But it's a rounder sound. So if you were playing Gudai Maharaj Ji style, how the baya is to be played. Gudai Maharaj Ji's baya was tighter. A lot of the tabla students today, they like to have a tighter baya because it responds much more. Pandit Kishan Maharaj Ji, although was another kind of a tabla player, whose baya was, he used to hit the baya very hard, to the point where it sounded like oh, oh, oh. And we used to wonder, wow, there's no resonance, how is he going to do it? But this is where his strength was, and he would press it in and get that juice out of the baya, and so that his playing was different, and his baya was lower. And so on those old sound systems of India, where there was really no bass available, it sounded very impressive because the baya was already low, but you had to work hard to be able to get any sound out of it. In today's world, with the sound system so good, and the volume that you can get out of it, if the baya is very low, the sound gets muddy because it's just, and unless you have the ability to be able to dig in, a la Kishan Maharaj Ji, and extract those kind of notes out of it, it will all sound very woo, 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 woo. So therefore, today's tabla players like to have the baya tuned up and put a lot of sticks in and play it that way, get the resonance, and then just work with that. So myself, I like to have a baya which allows me both possibilities. That is the resonance, the give in the skin, and once I have the give in the skin, to be able to have the thickness of the siyahi just so that it makes it possible for an old man like me to be able to push hard and get tones out. Like when I used to play in the Bombay film industry, one of the things that you had to learn was how to get the punch out of the baya, because here is tabla player, across facing the tabla player is the dholak player. This side is a side rhythm like bongos or something, and this side is a percussion player like kanjari or clave sticks or triangle or whatever. So there, and one mic like that far up for all of us. So therefore there was no such thing as playing because from the sound booth, the recording engineer would say, Zakir, thoda punch chahiye, thoda punch dena, to baएं ka punch chahiye. So that means the tabla player and the dholak player had to provide the punch. It didn't come from the microphone. So they played like, you know, the dholak players and the qawwali tabla players play, which is not but. So they punch like that. So that like 5 hours a day for a song. And it was kind of tough on the hand and tough on the fingers to be able to do that. But that's what we did. So I like to have a tabla which has the give on the skin, the siyahi, just so that there's not too heavy, thick siyahi that does not allow me to be able to press the skin so much. In the old days, the maestros used to say, "Mota siyahi lagana," because it was considered you know, what an amazing thing that with that kind of a mota siyahi or mota atta, the tabla player could still press the baya. I mean, that was like, kya baat hai. And they would wear iron bracelets to practice. I mean, that's the story that I've heard. So for tonal ability, strength here, which allows you baya is new and it's a little tight. When I play more and more, I don't get to actually, you know, what I'm doing all week, very busy with the granddaughter Zora and cooking and all that. By the way, just 2-3 days ago, I made lamb keema aloo butter. Came out very nicely, and so we are all cooking at home and all sorts of stuff. So the only time I get to play the tabla is when I'm with you, so once a week. So it hasn't yet settled in. When it does, it'll have much more of a give and will settle at a pitch that I want, from where I can press further down and still get the resonance. But this needs to be available. They used to say that the old maestros of Delhi, when they played the Qaeda, and they kept playing after like a year, not a year, about 6 months or so, they used to make a hole in the baya where the fingers play. That's how much they dug in with their fingers. And I've heard that same stories in Punjab and so on. I've seen it happen too. It happened to me once. I was playing with Ustad Ali Akbar Khan Sahab, and a hole developed right here. So I switched and I kept playing here. The hole was here, then the hole kept expanding. Khan Sahab, of course, with his head down, wasn't aware of what's going on, and he's playing. And by the time we got to the jhala, all this was open, total ventilation, and I was playing at this end just to be able to, you know, keep the baya, you know, element in the patterns going. And when we finished and Khan Sahab looked at my baya, he started laughing. He said, "Why didn't you tell me?" I said, what to tell you? So anyway, that does happen. So baya development, fingers, I was talking about it at that practice session we did earlier, developing so you have to develop the baya in a way where it is an equal participant with the tabla. Then, and not just that, you see, you have to realize this tabla projects more. Tabla projects more. Baya being a bassy sound, it does not project naturally. So that projection and that balance between the two has to come from you as a tabla player. So that's important. But don't try to take an easy way out. I mean, yes, we do have the sound system and all that is there. Oh, there are bass for then I'll raise the bass a little bit, give me a little bit of high mids so that all this comes through so I can play as soft as possible. That's okay in the concept. But at least when you're doing your riyaz, dig in. Play with the resonance of the baya. Really. So 13, 14, 15, 16. sorry, Chani Sabu. And the way I work with the bayan is the first way. Get involved, get some, it's like, okay, you come home after the concert and you consider yourself, oh yeah, I did some hard work today, now I deserve a good dinner. So there it is, bayan work is just as important as tabla. We sometimes just kind of concentrate on the tabla, and I've seen tabla students practicing and their eyes are on the tabla. So it's like watching the tabla. This guy is like, oh, secondary. Okay, he just needs to get one and that's it. No, it involves and it works, right? Work and in tandem and be an equal participant. In other words, become legitimate. So I think that's important, to be able to get a good tone on the bayan, is to develop the strength in your wrist, the strength in your fingers, and not be shy from exerting pressure, strength and weight onto your instrument. And so keep that in mind, and keep in mind the resonance of the instrument. That's why it's important to have a good bayan which has nice resonance. If it has the resonance, then you can work with it. So you're not stuck in the low bayan zone of Pandit Kishan Maharaj Ji, or a very high bayan zone in order to be able to coax resonance out of it, but somewhere in the middle where you have enough resonance but it requires a legitimate input of strength to be able to extract the sound out of the instrument. And so it becomes what they call something like a gatte ka baj, and that's it. I remember in Mahim, where I grew up, there was a tin ka chali meaning like a low income colony where all the tinwalas lived. These are the ones who would be beating up the pots, the tin pots, what they call kali. At the edge of that, as you entered the gate, just on the right side, Nizamuddin Khan Sahib used to live in a small little place. Now you've got 30 pots, hammer on the pots going teek, 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 and the din is so loud you can hear it 5 blocks away. You arrive there and you're standing outside Khan Sahib's door and you can hear him practicing with that din going on. No sound system. He's just practicing in there on a basic tabla, but he had the hands to be able to do that. My father used to say that his Guru Mian Qadir Bakhshi used to make him sit in winter with the windows open in Punjab, where the temperatures dropped to 6-5 degrees and so on, with no shirt, open body, and play, because the hands were so cold and it's so hard to play. They used to crack open. He said they used to bleed, but the whole idea was to be able to develop the strength no matter what the weather, no matter what the environment around you, and be able to be ready with a warm hand to be able to get on the tabla and fly. So that's important. Okay, now I'm going to play a little bit, and I just wanted to say that next Friday I'm going to invite my definitely much better half and a fine, incredible Kathak dancer, Tony, my wife, to join me, and we will talk about dance and tabla, and see how that relationship developed, because most of my early days were spent in dance classes playing tabla in Mahim, and in other places I used to go to Sitara Devi's dance class. There was a lady who used to teach dance called Bibi Bai, whose house I used to play tabla. I used to go to Lachu Maharaj Ji's house where he taught in Dadar, and at times I even used to go to bhavans and where the dance class was there, and I would be practicing. So a lot of my time was spent there. So it would be interesting to talk to her and kind of go and visit what shaped one of the important elements that shaped my tabla playing. Okay, let's see. Standard rela that everybody knows. This is the other one which my father used to play. It's called Kachut, how to throw your hand out for the dhirde. We'll talk about dhirde maybe next week or week after that, but we'll get there. But I also wanted to tell you that today, Friday, in California, Friday 5 p.m. California time, the SF Jazz Center is going to broadcast, digital or online broadcast, a concert that I did, I think 2 years ago, with the legendary bassist Dave Holland and the most incredible saxophone maestro Chris Potter. So it's a trio, it's called Cross Current Rio. And so that will be broadcast from 5 to 6 p.m. California time today, Friday, the 24th. Please dial in and watch. What we are trying to do is through these broadcasts, maybe have people put some money in the tip jar that's on the screen, so that musicians who are needy in the Bay Area can be provided with some funds. So that's what we are doing. So try and join in and watch. Okay, so we'll catch up with you next Friday. Both Tony G and I will be there with you. So again, be safe, take care of yourself, wash your hands, etc., etc., and etc. See you soon.